your business benefit from additional working capital? Would you like to increase sales?
Your $5,000 order, it can be paid $1,000 a month over 5 months. Since we started using First Class Capital, our sales have gone through the roof.
First Class Capital gives your company the ability to offer your customers flexible instalment plans for your goods or services. We provide working capital and a powerful sales tool with no bricks and mortar security required. We simply pay you within a couple of days. To learn more, visit firstclasscapital.com.au today.
Creating new levels of comfort. It's just one of the lengths we go to make you feel at home.
TPG presents our Unlimited Bundle. Get unlimited ADSL2 Plus with home phone line rental. Unlimited calls to local and standard national numbers. Unlimited calls to Australian mobile numbers. And unlimited calls to selected international countries. Plus a Wi-Fi modem. All for just $79.99 a month. Yep, $79.99 a month. TPG is a multi-award winner.
tpg.com.au.
It's 1:30 Eastern this Newsday on Sky News. Lunchtime agenda, Tom Connell just ahead. Let's check the top stories. Prime Minister Tony Abbott has addressed the media from the APEC summit in Indonesia, dismissing calls for an independent inquiry into his travel expense claims. He's admitted to claiming more than $1,000 to take part in an Ironman event 2 years ago and claiming travel allowances for his annual charity bike ride. The APEC summit continues, with Mr Abbott having met with Papua New Guinea Prime Minister Peter O'Neill. He'll also meet with US Secretary of State John Kerry. The man who gunned down Gold Coast detective Damien Leading has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum 20 years without parole. 41-year-old Philip Graham Abel was sentenced before a packed room in the Brisbane Supreme Court. When handing down the sentence, Justice James Douglas said Abel had shown no remorse and had a significant criminal history. Abel's co-accused, Donnelly McAvoy, will be sentenced at a future date. Police who were first on the scene of a burning building in Sydney's west have been praised for going into the flames without any protective gear. 2 men aged 40 and 60 and 8 police officers are in hospital following an explosion and fire at Wentworthville early this morning. One of the men managed to scramble free of the rubble when police arrived, while the other man was pulled to safety by fire crews. In the chaos, it was feared that 2 more people were still in the building, but police now believe that is not the case. There's been a breakthrough in the stabbing death case of Sydney man Morgan Huxley. A 20-year-old man has been arrested at Neutral Bay and is expected to be charged with murder. Mr Huxley was found last month in a bedroom of his home in the same suburb on the city's lower North Shore with several knife wounds. Detectives swooped on a unit at around 9:30 this morning, arresting the man who's right now being interviewed by detectives. Victorian Independent MP Jeff Shaw will apply to have his charges heard by a magistrate alone rather than by a judge and jury. Mr Shaw has faced court for allegedly misusing parliamentary entitlements. He appeared briefly at the Melbourne Magistrates Court on a charge of misconduct in public office and 23 counts of obtaining financial advantage by deception. Mr Shaw previously vowed to fight the charges. The case has been adjourned until the 21st of October. And in sport, Sonny Bill Williams has been left out of New Zealand's World Cup squad, fueling speculation of a return to rugby. Kiwi coach Stephen Carney saying the dual international was unavailable due to other commitments. The weather: showers in the east, warm in the south, becoming wet and windy in the southwest.
This is Lunchtime Agenda.
Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Agenda. I'm Tom Connell. Well, Tony Abbott is in the midst of a whole host of bilateral meetings as he gets used to the world stage, attending the APEC summit, of course, over in Bali. The Labor Party thought the Prime Minister would be a risk at these sort of occasions, but so far he has appeared quite comfortable on this world stage, except, of course, when it's come to, so far, the media conferences. We've had another day where many of the questions were about Tony Abbott's expenses over the last few years and whether or not all of them were, in fact, legitimate expenses that he claimed. And for more on this, we're joined by the Sky News political editor, David Spears, I should say, who is over in Bali today. Let's start on these expenses if we can, David. First of all, the Polly Pedal. This is, of course, the annual event that Tony Abbott takes part in. He raises money for charity, and he says this is legitimate because he has plenty of meetings along the way with community groups.
Yes, and look, I'm sure, Tom, that the Prime Minister would prefer not to have to deal with this distraction at the press conferences we've seen over the last couple of days while he's here at his first international summit, the APEC gathering in Bali. But on this issue, the Polly Pedal, which most of the viewers will be aware with, it is a good charity event. It raises money for carers. It takes up to a week, several days at least, going through a lot of small towns. And Tony Abbott's point is, you go to a lot of places that don't see politicians too often. He's holding a lot of community events along the way, which he does, and our colleague David Lipson went with him this year. But it has emerged that he did claim at last year's event $3,500 in travel and entitlements for his participation in it, and the year before that I think it was just over $1,000. Other MPs, such as Kevin Andrews, who also take part in this, did not claim allowances, but Tony Abbott did. He says, look, his role is a bit different. He's engaged a lot more in these community events. Here was his defence of this particular item.
And the great thing about Polly Pedal is that it takes me to towns and communities, sometimes hamlets, that very rarely see a politician. I suspect that most of the places that I visited on this year's Polly Pedal would not have seen a politician other than their local member in decades, let alone a leader of the opposition. I will do Polly Pedal next year as Prime Minister. I'm looking forward to it very much. It is a perfectly legitimate thing for a Member of Parliament to do. And
clearly this whole Polly Pedal business is not just about raising money for charity, which is great, but it is also clearly about the opposition leader, now Prime Minister, being able to spend some time in those communities as a politician. Now, the other item that's come up today is an Ironman event, a gruelling triathlon, or ultra triathlon if you like, that he took part in 2 years ago, November 2011, in Port Macquarie. Now, this is a pretty big event. It's highly regarded across the Asia-Pacific region as one of the key Ironman competitions. Tony Abbott worked hard to train for that and then competed in it, but he also claimed travel entitlement for this as well, and this came in at a little more than $1,000. He's also defended this on the grounds that it was a community event. Have a look.
I believe that all of my claims have been within entitlement, and let's not forget that Port Macquarie was a marginal seat, effectively, and I want to assure you that I don't go to marginal seats simply for sporting events, although the sporting event in question was a community event.
I guess the implication there is that he goes to marginal seats to campaign, and that's what he was doing as opposition leader. Now, there is grey area around the entitlement, whether it can be used for campaigning or indeed whether it's meant to be used for official parliamentary business. But either way, Tony Abbott defiant there that he's done nothing outside the entitlement. He has, of course, in the last week or so paid back two items: a $600 claim to attend Peter Slipper's wedding, of all people, and also about $1,000 for Sophie Mirabella's wedding. Why did he pay that money money back? Well, he he explained that he was erring on the side of caution. He said that at the time he felt this was within his entitlement. He was going as the leader of the House for the then Howard government, but in light of the criticism that's been made of George Brandis and Barnaby Joyce, also claiming taxpayers' money to go to the wedding of shock jock Mike Smith, Tony Abbott says he felt that because this was a bit of a grey area, he decided to err on the side of caution and repay that money. Tom, the Prime Minister has dismissed calls for any sort of independent review or new rules around travel entitlements. He's comfortable with where they sit at the moment, but you'd have to say a fair bit of discomfort for the coalition, for the new government on this issue this week at least.
Yeah, I suppose partly because they went so hard before the election. David, let's move on to the APEC summit itself. A couple of bilateral meetings of note between the Prime Minister and Malaysia and also PNG.
Yes, the meeting with the Papua New Guinea Prime Minister has just wrapped up a short time ago. We're yet to find out exactly what was discussed, but we understand they were going to discuss the Manus Island detention facility and the new arrangement struck by Kevin Rudd to have asylum seekers not just processed offshore there, but resettled there as well. This is something the coalition did have some concerns about, the lasting nature, if you like, of this agreement, but they'll be discussed between the two. They were discussed, I understand, between the two leaders here in Bali this morning. And again, Tony Abbott wanting to thank Papua New Guinea for its help in this issue for Australia. The meeting with the Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak here last night, also very interesting, and again because of the asylum seeker issue, and again because of things the coalition said prior to the election. You'll recall that back in 2011, in May, the Gillard government struck that people swap arrangement with Malaysia to send 800 asylum seekers there and take back 4,000 refugees in return. It was struck down by the High Court because Malaysia was not a signatory to the Refugees Convention. If legislation had passed through Parliament, it could have been put in place. It may have changed the course of events on asylum seekers, but we'll never know. The coalition resisted that, though. They did not support it because they were worried about how asylum seekers were treated in Malaysia. Well, today, Tony Abbott has said that he's offered an apology of sorts, or in his way an apology to the Malaysian leader for the way it was caught up in this very heated political debate. He's not specifically saying that what he said back then was wrong or that he takes it back, but he apologises for Malaysia being drawn into this contested debate. Tom?
Thanks for that, David Spears, and we'll have plenty more coverage, of course, from yourself out of Bali with that PM agenda this afternoon. Let's get on, though, to our political panel this afternoon. I have with me here in the Canberra studio Zeta Zelja, who is, of course, a freshly minted Liberal Senator. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thanks very much,
And
Tom.
also in Brisbane, we have Jim Chalmers. He is also a fairly fresh Labor MP. And I'll start with you, Jim, but this is a question for both of you. Considering you have just come to these positions, I'm interested in what you've been told, what information has been given to you in terms of claiming entitlements. Have you been given, for example, a detailed rundown, who to go to if you have any doubts? What sort of information have you been given?
Yeah, well, as new MPs and senators, and Zed would have been in the same boat as I have been the last few weeks, you do get some briefings on the entitlements system and how you claim and what's appropriate and not. But what David Spears referred to before as the grey area in the entitlement system does exist. The interesting thing about the grey area, though, is when you're briefed as a new MP, as I just have been, that you are encouraged to err on the side of caution at the time of claiming, not as the Prime Minister's saying, you know, now that an issue has blown up, he says he's erred on the side of caution. A lot of social media commentary this morning is being driven around the fact, well, perhaps he should have been more cautious at the time of the claim itself.
Zeta Zelja, in terms of this big grey area, what were you told? In terms of, for example, this wedding expense, Philip Ruddock says he believes he was entitled to claim it. What's your take on this?
Well, look, I think there's no specific advice on those sorts of things. I think there's a whole range of entitlements, there's a whole range of guidelines. It is up to individual members to interpret those, to use their best judgment. And I think that for the most part, members do that very well. And I think that where there is a grey area, I think as the Prime Minister has said, sometimes it's appropriate just to pay the money back. But I don't think that anyone could argue that what's going on here is anything other than people in Parliament doing their best. There are many of these forms that they would have to fill out on a weekly basis, and I think that Tony Abbott has always been very careful with these things, and I think we all need to be careful. And if there is a grey area, as the Prime Minister has said, those things can be resolved by paying it back if the member chooses to do so.
Well, the Prime Minister, you said he's been very careful. He did talk about always erring on the side of caution, but if there's an event, you'd assume that the Ironman event in Port Macquarie during that day would have dominated his day. If you've got a couple of side meetings, if you like, but there's one big meeting in the middle, from what you've heard from your advice, is that the advice to just maybe, well, I'll take it out of my own pocket?
Well, again, there'd be no specific advice, but can I say on this that a Leader of the Opposition has a job of getting out to the community. I think that one of the reasons that Tony Abbott was such a successful Leader of the Opposition is because he was going out there and listening and having all sorts of important engagement with stakeholders, meetings with stakeholders. I mean, is anyone really arguing now that if you are doing that, if you are going to various electorates as Leader of the Opposition and you also are raising money for a charity at the same time, that there shouldn't be any entitlements that go with that? If the Labor Party's arguing that, I think it'd be interesting to hear it, because it will probably make the new Leader of the Opposition's job very, very difficult if they believe it should be that restrictive.
Well, Jim Chalmers Labor has been calling for a wider investigation into this, but we've heard reports on both sides of this for many years. Don't both sides have skeletons in the closet, and is that a wise idea?
I'd like to agree with Zed on something. He said that the overwhelming majority of parliamentarians try and do the right thing and exercise their judgment appropriately. That's definitely true, and I certainly agree with Zed on that point. The issue about the review of entitlements would be to make sure that there is the appropriate guidance, that any of these grey areas are minimised where possible. And then, having taken care of those process issues, there is a political issue here, and it's one of hypocrisy. And a lot of the figures in the coalition right now who are jumping up and down about these sorts of issues in the past have gone strangely quiet now. I think we need to treat all of these cases on their merit, politically and process-wise, and we need to be a bit more responsible so that people like Senator Brandis and others aren't applying one standard to one side of the parliament and an entirely different one to the other.
All right, well, I'm told there are a few more of these stories to come out over the next few weeks from both sides, so we'll certainly watch this space. Do stay with us here on Lunchtime Agenda. Back with more after the break.
The same hotel, the same pool, but two prices. Why pay more? Do the Trivago check. On Trivago, you always find the perfect deal for 600,000 hotels and over 100 different websites. Just select your ideal hotel and Trivago shows you where to book at the best price. Hotel Trivago.
All over the world, our card members are saying yes to faster rewards. Last year, we helped them enjoy over 14 million great experiences. Just part of the more rewarding service we deliver daily. American Express. Realise the potential.
The engineers that created the legendary Suzuki Hayabusa comes a machine with the same sporty DNA, the exhilarating Kazashi, from $29,990 drive away.
Something to get with! Yes!
Make a trip to the McDonald's drive-thru and you could win. Purchase anything from the drive-thru. Enter the unique code on your receipt via SMS or online and you could win your choice of these award-winning Hyundai i30s. There's one to win every week for 6 weeks. Plus, there's 25 $50 Caltex Star cash cards to be won every day. With a Hyundai i30 every week, it's no wonder everyone loves a trip to Macca's.
Yeah!
For years, Mexicans tried to find a fun use for forks at dinner. Introducing new Order Paso Mexican rice kits. True genius, Mexican style.
Everyone loves an upgrade, and now is the best time to upgrade to a new Sealy Posturepedic with titanium alloy springs and our Comfort Core Centre. It's the Sealy Upgrade Your Sleep event. But hurry, it's on for a limited time only.
Finding health insurance that's right for you at the right price can be overwhelming. Take Phil here.
I've been looking for private health insurance, but it all seems so expensive. I only really want cover for the things I'm likely to use, like going to the dentist.
With NIB, that's not a problem, because you're the one in control. You can tailor your health insurance package to suit your needs, which helps to keep costs down. For example, with Core Extras from just $4.95 a week for singles, you'll get 60% back on major dental, general dental, optical and physio until you reach your annual limits. Plus, there's no annual limit on preventative dental, so you can get the most from your extras cover, all from just $4.95 a week for singles. So don't wait any longer. Call NIB now on 1330 55 for great value health cover. The friendly consultants are standing by, ready to take your call. It's worth it.
Welcome back to Lunchtime Agenda, and we're still discussing a few of the issues of the day with my political panel. In here in Canberra we've got Liberal Senator Zed Seselja, and also we have Labor MP up in Brisbane, Jim Chalmers. Zed, I'd like to get to the Chinese free trade agreement that Tony Abbott said he wants to do within 12 months, however he manages to do that. I'm interested on him giving this deadline. He's been pretty reluctant to give deadlines on things, for example, on stopping the asylum seeker boats. That had one that was now removed. Why is he so confident of getting this done since it's been bogged down since 2005? Is that dangerous to set a deadline?
Well, obviously I think that there's a fair bit of goodwill on both sides, and I think it's part of this new government's commitment to free trade. Tony Abbott made it very clear on the night of the election that Australia is now open for business. He is expressing that in all sorts of ways, as is Andrew Robb in his role. So Tony Abbott's made that very clear. I think that these bilaterals, with China and with others, will be very, very important for opening up trade and investment, for seeing more prosperity for Australia and our region, and I think it's good to set a deadline. I don't think we should allow these things to get too bogged down for too long. A lot of work has gone in, but I believe that in the next 12 months that can happen. I think it'd be a very good thing if it does.
One of the key sticking points, though, appears to be this threshold for Foreign Investment Review Board. Now, the coalition has said they're going to bring that down to $15 billion from about $250. China wants it, reportedly they're quite strong on this, they want it right up to $1 billion. That's a massive difference. So if you're talking about no election promises broken, no surprises, what's going to go there? If China doesn't shift on this deadline, is it $1 billion, or does the coalition have to look again at that $15 billion, the lowering of it?
Well, look, I'm not going to speculate on what might happen in these negotiations. Obviously, Andrew Robb and others will lead those, but I think it's what is important is that we work to get this done. There's always going to be sticking points. If there weren't sticking points, then these wouldn't be an issue. There will be sticking points. The government will work through those sticking points, and I'm very confident that we can get a very good outcome.
Jim Chalmers, the negotiations, as we've been saying, they've been going on since 2005 on this matter. It is really about time, isn't it, to say what Tony Abbott said and said, we'll get what we can on this, see what we can come up with.
Yeah, I'm all for free trade, and I think it's great if an Australian Prime Minister can progress these sorts of agreements around the world. And of course, Craig Emerson and Richard Marles did a lot of good work in the second term of the Rudd and Gillard governments to progress these sorts of issues around the world, so I acknowledge that work. I think what Zed described as a sticking point is a bit more substantial than that. Those foreign investment thresholds are a really big deal for the Chinese. That's our experience of them. And what we're seeing here is a real collision of pre-election rhetoric versus post-election reality for Prime Minister Abbott. He can't have it both ways. He can't have his policy on foreign investment implemented in Australia and get this kind of deal that he wants in China. He has to choose.
What about Labor's focus, though? Did Labor lose a bit of focus in the last term, considering China's been ongoing since 2005, Japan since 2007 and Korea since 2009?
I don't think any credible piece of commentary could suggest that. A lot of good work was done by Emerson and Marles, as I said. A lot of progress was made, not just in these terms of trade relationships with these countries, but right around the world, and also beyond trade into the sort of economic coordination that Wayne Swan and Chris Bowen and others were responsible for at the G20.
Can I just say on that, Tom, I think that Jim and the Labor Party continue to underestimate Tony Abbott. They did so in opposition, and they're now doing it in government. I think he's already shown through his trip to Indonesia that he does have the ability to work very, very well with our neighbours and with our trading partners. And so I have every confidence that he will be able to deliver on this, and what we will get in Australia is a very good outcome that opens up trade with China, one of our most important trading partners, and I think that will be a good thing. But the Labor Party continues to talk Tony Abbott down and claim he can't get things done. I think he continues to prove them wrong.
One of Jim Chalmers' points was the fact that he's had to essentially, his opposition leader, go pretty hard on things, or he decided to, and he's finding it a bit more difficult in government. I'd like to just play you a quick clip of what Tony Abbott said happened between that meeting with him and the Malaysian Prime Minister. Have a listen to Tony Abbott on this.
I offered an act of contrition, if you like, to Prime Minister Najib for the way Malaysia got caught up in what was a very intense and at times somewhat rancorous debate in Australia. He knows that we play our politics pretty hard in our country, and I think he understood.
Now, that was in reference to asylum seekers, of course, the Malaysian People Swap deal, which was struck down by the High Court, which the coalition opposed. But they went further than that. They were attacking, at the time, Malaysians' human rights records, pointing out they hadn't signed the Amnesty International agreement on that. This is a sign, isn't it, that in some elements Tony Abbott's having to sort of sheepishly walk away from a couple of those stronger lines?
No, I think Tony Abbott made the point in one of his other press conferences that he made the point that his issue was always with the Gillard government. The issue as the opposition leader was to hold the Gillard government to account for what they could and couldn't get done. They clearly couldn't get it done when it came to asylum seeker policy. And what Tony Abbott is doing now is what we would expect of our Prime Minister. He is working with the nations in our region, and I think that all leaders, all political leaders acknowledge that there is robust domestic debate. Now, Tony Abbott hasn't gone back on anything that he's said, but what he's looking to do is build very constructive relationships with leaders in our region. Would we expect any different?
Jim Chalmers, I'd just like to change topics to finish on. Get your opinion on something your interim leader said, Chris Bowen. He said of Kevin Rudd that he'd always acted in the best interests of the Labor Party as someone intimately involved, obviously, in the Gillard government. Is that how you remember things always being?
Look, I see no purpose in going through the past, Tom. There's a wonderful thing going on right now. Chris Bowen's the interim leader, but we're choosing between two other very strong candidates for leader of the Labor Party. And I think the entire Labor show should be moving forwards, onwards and upwards, rather than worrying too much about the last 3 or 6 years.
Zeta, just quickly with you, you've gone from being leader of the opposition here in the ACT to member of a government where you've got to get permission to do long-form interviews, I suppose, such as this show. Is that something that you think could be a restriction on party members having a proper say?
Well, look, I haven't found it to be a restriction.
I'm glad you could come on today.
Well, I've come on whenever I've been asked, and I'll continue to do so, Tom. So, you know, I want to put the case for my community and also for the government. I think it's a very good government. I think we're going to, you know, have a much better government than what we've experienced over the last 6 years in Australia. So, look, it's great to be part of the team, and I'll put the case wherever I can.
Certainly sounding like a team player. To tell you, thank you for your time today. Thank you as well, Jim Chalmers. That's all the time we have for today on Lunchtime Agenda. Stay with us for the news on Newsday coming up at 2 o'clock.
Finding health insurance that's right for you at the right price can be overwhelming. Take Phil here.
I've been looking for private health insurance, but it all seems so expensive. I only really want cover for the things I'm likely to use, like going to the dentist.
With NIB, that's not a problem, because you're the one in control. You can tailor your health insurance package to suit your needs, which helps to keep costs down. For example, with core extras from just $4.95 a week for singles, you'll get 60% back on major dental, general dental, optical and physio until you reach your annual limits. Plus, there's no annual limit on preventative dental, so you can get the most from your extras cover, all from just $4.95 a week for singles. So don't wait any longer. Call NIB now on 1330 55 for great value health cover. The friendly consultants are standing by, ready to take your call. It's worth it.
Australia's a harsh environment. Would your decking last with little maintenance?
Mudwood would. Would your decking last without oil?
Mudwood would.
This wood foot is mudwood.
Would your decking survive termites?
Mudwood would. Because mudwood could.
And if you were about to build a deck, would it come with a warranty?
This wood, Mudwood wood.
So for your next deck, choose Modwood. Modwood wood.
Mudwood wood.
Thank you. That'll be $10, please. OK, here's all of my card details. $250, please. OK, here's all of my card details.
That'll be $150, please.
OK, here's all of my card details.
Oh, no.
Stop giving out your card numbers all over the net. No one sees your financial details when you check out with PayPal.
Well, what if...
Remind me why we're renovating.
I thought you liked the original Art Deco bathroom.
Top up your loan to finance your renovations. Want a flexible home loan? CommBank can. Visit us in branch or online.
The RAV4 is ready for action. Available in 3 powerful engine sizes. Gusty turbo diesel and 2 punchy petrol variants. Live powerfully, live RAV forward. Toyota RAV4.
Need help cleaning the house? It's time you got a Sticky Buddy. Dog hair, cat hair, spouse hair, mouse hair, crumbs, it doesn't matter. Sticky Buddy captures the lot. Then just rinse it, dry it, and it's sticky all over again. And no sticky residue. Sticky Buddy's little rubber fingers reach deep into your carpet to grab stuff your vacuum cleaner hasn't seen in years. Then rinse it, dry it, and it stays sticky. Perfect for all surfaces, clothing, the car, even your pets. You get the large Sticky Buddy and the compact Sticky Buddy. Look for Sticky Buddy in store.
Wow, that's a huge crash.
Prince Harry shaking a lot of hands, very generous with his time.
Travel entitlements, controversy.
$600 to attend the wedding of Winter Slipper.
The 2 best teams going head-to-head, and the Roosters just getting the edge.
Continuing focus on trade deals.
Sending positive overtures to China.
Delivering unrivaled live coverage. This is Sky News, Australia's news channel.
It's 2 o'clock in Melbourne, 11 o'clock in Perth. Hello and welcome to Newsday. I'm Vanessa Trezise. Our top story, relief from the family of murdered Gold Coast policeman Damien Leading after a life sentence is handed down to his killer. We'll have more from Sky News Brisbane reporter Elizabeth Tilley outside the Supreme Court. Prime Minister Tony Abbott continues his meetings at the APEC summit alongside President Putin and John Kerry as he fends off calls for an independent inquiry into his travel expense claims. Sky News political editor David Spears will bring us all the details from Bali. Sydney police being praised for their bravery after saving 2 men from an explosive fire at Wentworthville. And in sports, Sonny Bill declares he's not available for the Rugby League World Cup. Tomorrow's weather, windy with showers in the